Questions asked of Ahura with thankfulness and devotion. Many verses may have fallen out. Here are, on the other hand, the piece may have been made up of homogeneous but not originally connected fragments, has been left with some abrupt translations. These, however, occasion very little difficulty in exegetical treatment, and are also not displeasing. The formula, "This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me." All right, seems to have been suggested by Yasna 31:14. We might therefore look upon this piece as composed later than Yasna 31, but not necessarily in a later generation, or even from another hand. In fact, the style is thoroughly homogeneous in certain places with that of pieces which we ascribe without a doubt to Zarathustra, and the signs of struggle point to the earliest period. It is possible that the words in Yasna 31 and the formula here were of common origin, neither having any extended priority to the other, or the words may be original here, as derived in Yasna 31. Whether Zarathustra or another of the narrow circle of religious leaders was the composer throughout depends upon the further questions already more than once broached as to how far a corresponding intellectual cultivation was extended at the period in the community, and as to what is the probability of the existence of more than one man in the small group, endowed with the peculiar qualities everywhere manifested in the hymns. See the remarks in the introduction and elsewhere. It is safest to say that Zarathustra composed most of the matter here before us, and that the supplementary fragments were composed under his dominating, if not immediate influence. Verse 1 and 2 seems an introduction, but hardly give added emphasis to the fact that the following questions were expressions of devotion, and only in a few instances appeals for knowledge. Verses 3 to 5 are certainly questions intended to express veneration while naming particular objects of devout inquiry. Verse 6 stands somewhat apart. Verses 7 through 11 enter into details touching the moral and religious improvement of the people. 12 through 14 are polemical. 15 and 16 are prophetical, etc. 1. More closely, the composer beseeches Ahura to speak to him, and in a manner characteristic of himself, as in distinction from the falsifying utterance of the opposing religion, which was so familiarly described as the religion of falsehood. He is entreated as to reveal, as is his wont, the holy truth, and the first question propounded to him by the composer as comprehensive of all others is how he might offer homage, the homage of God himself or of his bountiful spirit. See Ma'inu in verse 2. And he further acts that Ahura may speak to him, showing him by what ceremonial he may conciliate him, and by what helps of grace that spirit or Ahura himself may be inclined to draw near to him in accordance with his frequent prayer. 2. One more he acts, how he may serve that spirit as the foremost one of heaven. Compare Yasna 31:8 and the Parsi Vahist, who seeks for this addition of praise to praise. For as the supreme claim to our veneration, he had, as a guardian, see Yasna 31:13, like Ahura in yet another place, held off destruction from all believing saints and from all repentant men, see Yasna 31:3, and that although as the chief of heaven, yet also as a benignant friend. 3. From these introductory petitions, inserted perhaps before many lost verses, he proceeds in another tone, although he may still be said to say, what is homogeneous to the foregoing. Yea, I ask how I may serve him, O Master, for he is indeed thyself, and therefore to show my fervent homage I ask, who was not the first establisher alone, but the first father of our holy order, as the personified immortal, and that not by creation, but by generation, as the parent generates the child, who fixed for the stars and sun that way, the undeviating path through space, long noticed and studied by our fathers, as no random course or unknown progress save thee. 4. The laws of gravitation then become the theme of his praise, still expressed in the form of questions. Also the atmospheric phenomena, especially the clouds driven by winds, not like the Maruts beyond the mountains perhaps, but still terrible as winds can be. But he cannot leave even the sublime objects of nature without thinking once more of that spiritual power, the strength of righteous character, which was justly more impressive, although still more familiar, and which he designates as ever by the good mind. Here his great immortal is left as an immortal thought, and is spoken of as created not born, like Asha in the 3rd verse. 5. Beyond a doubt, recognizing the satisfactions of energetic life as well as the solaces of slumber, and as forming by their contrast the necessary changes which builds up happiness, he alludes to the supreme arranger as well skilled, and asks, who so wisely relieved the day by night, but again he cannot close without reverting to the course of moral duty. 6. Seized with a doubt which again only heightens the fervor of his assurance, he asks whether indeed the facts which he proclaims are really what they seem, whether piety, although aided by the good mind and planted through Ahura's grace within us, will indeed at last or soon assign the purified realm to the servants of Ahura, who were there among the masses before his eyes, Ta'ebyo, are to Ahura himself as their sovereign controller. Ta'ebyo, long O with both, but an between A and the second, as, and including all ritual, including all rural riches in herself, he acts for whom he had made the kind, not now, wailing in her grief, Yasna 29:9, but delight affording, on account of the influence of piety and benevolence, embodied in the kingdom, and inferring that God had made her for these same, the faithful masses. 7. And going yet further back, he asks who made that paternal and filial piety itself, together with the realm which it should leaven. Answering his own inquiries by an inference, he adds, I am pressing thee with fullness in these questions, O thou bountiful spirit. Compare Ma'inus are Ma'inu in verse 2, the maker of all, sun, stars, and holy qualities. 8. Turning now to verbal revelations, he acts by what means his soul may prosper in moral goodness, praying that it may indeed thus advance as the expected answer would declare. 9. He prays that he may know how he may still further sanctify that religion which the king of the holy realm, compare Angius Vahistahya Paurvim, the one like Ahura, see Kshmavato and Thwavas in verse 1, would teach dwelling in the same abode in which Ahura is also elsewhere said to dwell, with the holy order and the good mind. See Yasna 46:16, 10. Expressing all in a single word, he asks Ahura to reveal to him the da'ana, the insight, the substance of that religion which was of all things best, and which alone could advance the settlements with the holy ritual and moral order as its ally, which would also render all their moral and ceremonial actions and moral principles just, by means of the divine piety, which was the realization in practice. And he closes with the exclamation that the wishes and desires of his soul, when most imbued with wisdom, will seek for God. 11. Following out of the influence of Ahura, that personified piety, he asks to know by what practical means she may approach and be realized as the characteristic of those to whom the holy insight should be preached, avowing that God knows how prominent he is in his devotion to the matter, and with what hatred seated in his spirit he views the opposing entities. 12. Then, casting a searching glance over the masses and perhaps eyeing their several groups, each headed by its chieftainship, Sardina'u Sengha Ya, he cries, answering Ahura formally, but the people really so also elsewhere frequently, and says, "Who is the righteous believer as regards these my questions, asked of God to express my belief in him? And who is the skeptic, which man does the Engra Ma'inu govern, or which as evil is that chief himself?" And recalling the galling fact that some are tolerated who not only do not assist but oppose his efforts, and perhaps having some half-convinced sections in full sight, he cries with bitterness, "Why is this sinner, that chief, who opposes me, as Engra Ma'inu opposed Ahura?" Compare Pa'ete Erete with A'at Mo'e Pa'ete Erete in Vendidad 1. Why is he not believed to be what in very truth he is? Why is he still countenanced? 13. And then, with a fierceness which reminds us of Saz Doom, Sta Ith Isha, Yasna 31:18. But what is deeper, because, proposing a less material remedy, he asks, why must we abide the sight of these oppressors, representing their lie demon, as if it's their goddess? How can I drive her hence to hell beneath, not to those who hesitate like these, pausing before they condemn the evil party, but to those who are already filled with their disobedience, and who, having no communion at all with us, receive no light, like these, from the reflected glory of the truth, and who have, moreover, neither sought nor shared like these the counsels of thy good mind. Yea, how, he reiterates, can I deliver up that lying female entity in the persons of her adherents to the holy order, in the persons of the saints, into their hands, to slay her, not with the snot ethis only, but to destroy her as a falsehood by the mantras of thy doctrine, not barely to withstand these wicked corrupters as we do now, enduring the silence of these masses at their deeds. See verse 12. Their fear of them are their connivance with their creeds, but to spare slaughter among them, to their total overthrow. And in Surah 4 of Al-Quran, we have the idea that all these female entities that want to be worshipped are demons, and that none of the light being, shayateen min al-jinn, basically. Well, some human females want that too, so they're shayateen min al-nas, right? That's all. But anyways, Surah 53 talks about how the unfallen angels, the light beings, how only the disbelievers are going to call them female. So, but people make up that verse that I'm thinking right there is goes even further and kind of hints at all this angelology that's largely just people conceptually making up names. 15. He then presses on the coming collision and prays to know which of the hosts, compare Asayau of Yasna 31:2, that claim the Ruvata, Ahura will give the prize. 16. And who further asks, shall be the champion, who shall lead the victors, the Vereth Remgan, compare Sarga of Yasna 29:3, who will thus take up the Snot at this, and the Mathra, see verse 14, and so at once contend for both the worlds. And he wishes him, wrought alone, pointed out. Not alone, brought alone? Wishes him not alone, pointed out, I think it's supposed to say. But approached, as Zarathustra was approached, Yasna 43, by an obedient will and a move to his holy work, by the inspiring good mind of Ahura, be that champion, Ratu, whosoever, the Lord might wish salvation in the shape of success in his great attempt, should be his portion. Yasna 43:1. 17. Half intimating that he himself may be the coming man, he begs to know when he can have that confidence in which, as in the desired Parste and Darste of Yasna 33:6, he may communicate more closely with Ahura, and through the revelation which might be vouchsafed, may become a protecting leader to secure the ever named abiding two, weal, W-E-A-L, and immortality, which were the better than the good. The Vahista of the saints, 18, a preliminary wish arising, he asks that he might receive the honorary gift of maiden mares and a camel as material for sacrifice before a battle, the highest interest of the people, even their lasting welfare, demanding that he should receive this help. 19. For the monarch, our leading chief, who may withhold this justly deserved and needed help or honor, he declares, by the terms of his following question, that some instant judgment will be forthcoming, for the threats of the future condemnation seem for the moment only trite. 20. As a peroration, he appeals to the reason for the wavering groups among the masses who still delay to call evil evil. See verse 12. And he asks whether the of us, as we see elsewhere, the of us are that by choice, as represented by their adherents, had ever been good rulers when they had the power, were not robbery and violence then the law with them as now, and did not the kine, as representing the sacred herds and people, lift up her wailing voice? The piece from verse 12 seems to constitute a religious war song. These verses seem not to have been originally connected with the calm and thankful contemplations of verse 1 through 10, but later united with them. Now, I didn't get that feeling when I've heard the Avestan for this, but by religious war song they mean, see, there's some raiding and stuff going on against them and that sort of thing. Just like with Muhammad, it wasn't, he wasn't just trying to take over the land, and there were no raid. They didn't make a living off caravan raiding. They didn't even tend to even really get back what was taken from them in the first place. And the conquest of Mecca, it's like, well, they didn't take Mecca back. They didn't want the confusion there. Verses 12 through 20 stand in the closest connection. This doesn't really have anything to do with Zarathustra, except it's analogous. Stand in the closest connection with Yasna 46, which has, however, preserved more the elements of sorrow and discouragement which influence the leader and his followers at times. The translation. 1. This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me aright, when praise is to be offered, how shall I complete the praise of the one like you, O Mazda. Let the one like thee declare it earnestly to the friend who is such as I, thus through thy righteousness within us, to offer friendly help to us, so that the one like thee may draw near us through thy good mind within the soul. 2. This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me aright, how in pleasing him may we serve the Supreme One of heaven, the better world, yea, how to serve that chief who may grant us those blessings of his grace, and who will seek for grateful requitals at our hands. For he, bountiful as he is, through the righteous order, will hold off ruin from us, all guardian as he is, for both the worlds, O Spirit, Mazda, and a friend. 3. This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me aright, who by generation was the first father of the righteous order within the world, who gave the recurring sun and stars their undeviating way, who established that whereby the moon waxes and whereby she wanes, save thee. These things, O great Creator, would I know, and others likewise still. 4. This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me aright, who from beneath has sustained the earth and the clouds, above that they do not fall, who made the waters and the plants, who to the wind has yoked on the storm clouds, the swift and fleetest too, who, O great Creator, is the inspirer of the good thoughts within our souls. 5. This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me aright, who as a skillful artisan has made the lights and the darkness, who as thus skillful hath made the sleep and the zest of waking hours, who spread the auroras, the noontides, and midnight monitors to discerning man. Duty's true guides. 6. This I ask thee, O Ahura, tell me right, these things which I shall speak forth, if they are truly thus, doth the piety which we cherish in reality increase the sacred orderliness within our actions. To these thy true saints hath she given the realm through the good mind, for whom hast thou made the mother kind, the producer of joy. 7. This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me right, who fashioned Automate, our piety, the beloved, together with thy sovereign power, who, through his guiding wisdom, hath made the Son, revering the Father, who made him beloved, with questions such as these, so abundant. O Mazda, I press thee, O bountiful Spirit, thou, maker of all. 8. This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me aright, that I may ponder these, which are thy revelations, O Mazda, and the words which were asked of thee by thy good mind within us, and that whereby we may attain, through thine order, to this life's perfection. Yea, how may my soul with joyfulness increase in goodness? Let it thus be. 9. This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me right, how to myself shall I hallow the faith of thy people, which the beneficent kingdom's Lord hath taught me, even the admonitions which he called thine equal, hath taught me through his lofty and most righteous sovereignty and power, as he dwells in like abode with thine order and thy good mind. 10. This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me aright, that holy faith, which is of all things best, and which, going on hand in hand with thy people, shall further my lands in Asha, thine order, and through the words of Automate, our piety, shall render actions just. The prayers of mine understanding will seek for thee, O Ahura. 11. This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me right, how to these, your worshippers, may that piety once again and evermore approach to them, to whom, O Lord, thy faith is uttered. Yea, I beseech of thee to tell me this, I who am known to thee as thy foremost of servants, all other entities with their polluted worshippers I look upon with my spirit's hate. 12. This I ask thee, O Ahura, tell me aright, who is the righteous one in that regard in which I ask thee my question, and who is evil, for which is the wicked, or which is himself the foremost wicked one, and the vile man who stands against me in this gang of thy blessing, wherefore is he not held and believed to be the sinner that he is? 13. This I ask thee, O Ahura, tell me right, how shall I banish this demon of the lie from us hence to those beneath who are filled with rebellion? The friends of righteousness, as it lives in thy saints, gain no light from their teachings, nor have they loved the questions which thy good mind asks in the soul. 14. This I ask thee, O Ahura, tell me right, how shall I deliver that demon of the lie into the two hands of thine order, as he lives in our hosts, to cast her down to death through thy mantras of doctrine, and to send mighty destruction upon her evil believers, to keep those deceitful and harsh oppressors from reaching their aims. 15. This I ask thee, O Ahura, tell me right, if through thy righteousness within our souls thou hast the power over this for my protection, when the two hosts shall meet in hate, as they strive for these vows which thou dost desire to maintain, how, O Master, and to which of both wilt thou give the day? 16. This I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me right, who smites me. This I ask thee, O Ahura, tell me aright, who smites with victory, in the protection of all who exist, and for the sake of, and by means of thy doctrine, yea, clearly reveal a Lord having power to save us for both lives. Then let our obedience with thy good mind draw near to that leader, O Master, yea, to him, to whomsoever thou shalt wish that he should come. 17. This I ask thee, O Ahura, tell me aright, how, O Master, shall I proceed to that great conference with you, to that consummation of your own, when my spoken wish shall be effected unto me, the desire to be in the chieftainship, and supported by the hope of weal and immortality, those saving powers of thy grace, and by that holy mantra, thy word of thought, which fully guides our way through righteousness within. 18. And having gained thine audience and thine order's sacred chieftainship, then I ask of thee, O Ahura, and tell me right, how shall I acquire that thy righteous order's prize 10 costly mares, male mated, and with them the camel, those signs of honor and blessing for thy chief? I ask thee for these gifts for sacrifice, for it was told me, for the sake of our welfare and our salvation, and of our immortality, in what manner thou shalt give to these thy conquering hosts, both of these thy gifts of grace. 19. This is I ask of thee, O Ahura, tell me aright, in the case of the recreant of him who does not give this honored gift to him who hath earned it, yea, who does not give it to this Papricious tiller of the earth, to him who in no respect shows favor, to the demon of the lie, even to the correct speaker of thy sacrificial word. What shall be his sentence in the first, now at this time, and because of this false dealing I ask it, knowing well his doom at last. 20. And how, as to our deluded foes, have the Eva Yasnas worshippers ever reigned as worthy kings. 'Tis barely I ask of thee, the demon worshippers, who fight for these who act amiss, had they well reigned, by whom the Carpan and the Usig gave the sacred kine to rapine, whence too the Cavian in persistent strength has flourished, and these have also never given us tribal wealth nor blessings. Nor for the kine have they brought waters to the fields, for the sake of the righteous order in our hosts, to further on their growth and welfare. And there seems to be a little bit of a blending here of my thoughts regarding previous translations. You know, this I ask of thee, speak to me truly, and so I guess there was other stuff here, but so let's see if we can finish the comment on the progress and the struggles of the cause. And where are we? Are we at the good of the strivers? See the note on verse 3, as read as an alternative from the two Arana, as an inferior rendering of tradition. I cite Naryosang here. That matter should be heard talking gushta as a third singular in a subjunctive sense. That is, a study should be made of it by him who is, even in any degree, acquainted with the righteous design of Hormigda for both worlds. He is independent in the literal truth of his words, in his freedom of speech, and his fear has no existence. Thy brilliant fire gives the explanations to the contenders. It makes purity and impurity evident. I follow the admirable lead of the Pahlavi here, as the previous verse mentions veracity. Its indication is pavan frif isno, so freely, and we are into the comment on verse 20, talking about the saint being deceived, and for him, latter destruction. I differ with diffidence from the hint of the Pahlavi here, and elsewhere it has Shivan, which means tears, which however is free for calamity and sorrow. The nominative singular, see its position. Anak, Rubisne, Yamalalun Endo is placed together with such passages as 46:11, 49:11, and 51:13 form the basis of more the complete yasts, and that's per place with AU and the line, and has led on, and I guess we have